All right, so we talked about what PECS is, so you know that, and now you also know that if you're not trained in PECS, you should acquire some training in PECS before you try to implement it on your own or work with someone who has training in PECS, because if you follow the steps, it's very effective. But if you don't know what the steps are or how to follow them, or how to deal with some of the little problems that can happen when you try to implement the steps, because nothing is ever like smooth. That just seems to be life. You need to know kind of a few things about how you can make adjustments and address any problems while you're implementing. So that's all important. But once you have taught individuals to use PECS, PECS is really quite a nice thing to have to support communication in a variety of contexts. This is a PECS board that I had made for a student for gym class. And so he only needed this vocabulary in gym, so he didn't carry this around. He had a big PECS binder that had hundreds of symbols in it, because kids should have lots of vocabulary. Kids who talk have lots of vocabulary. But he didn't really need all of this all of the time, so we kept this in the gym so that he could request materials and activities in the context of gym. This is a PECS-like board that I made. This was just a restaurant ordering board that I made for a number of kids I supported. And basically the board is just a generic board. So the I want and the please are already there. And the openings here are openings to place your desired food items on. And up here was an opening with some Velcro that you could put whatever restaurant you're going to on, so that parents could kind of set these up before going out to a restaurant. So if they knew what restaurant they were going to, on the back of the board was Velcro. They could place the food choices for whatever restaurant they were at. And then when you get to the restaurant, you show the kid, okay, here we are. Flip it over, what do you want, right, choose. I did have one issue once with one student, you see, because there were 4 openings, and his mom was taking him to McDonald's just for a snack. And so he could choose a drink and a snack thing, but we wanted to provide him with choices. So we had 2 drink options and 2 snack options. And so he sat down at the table, and it was the first day he'd used this, and it was the first day for Mom, and I'm behind the camera, and Mom turns it over and she says, okay, you know, what would you like to drink? And he's got this right away, so he rips that picture off and he slaps it on the front, you know, he wants apple juice or whatever. And then she says, well, what would you like to have for a snack? What would you like to eat? And he goes over and he picks French fries or whatever it was he picked and slaps that on. But then you see there were 4 openings. You know where this is headed. And there were 4 symbols in total of things that he could choose from. So he then proceeds to go to the back and he takes the rest of the symbols off and he fills the board. So now the board has two drinks and 2 snacks, and she says to him, no, choose just one. So we had a little bit of an issue where he got upset as she then removed both drinks and said, which one of the drinks do you want? Let's put that one down, and then she put the extra that he did not want in her pocket and then choose one food, and then he was okay. But we decided that in the future for him, depending on where they were going and how much he was expected or allowed to order, we had blank white symbols. So if they were going and it was only a drink and a snack, then she would cover these with 2 blank white symbols. So now there are only 2 openings, so it made it more clear, right? If they were going for a meal and not dessert, then there were 3 openings. If they were going and he could order dessert as well, there were 4 openings. So depending on what was allowed and what time of day it was, she'd either cover or uncover the openings. Does that make sense? Right? And then he'd just have this and he'd trot it on up to the counter and slap that on the counter. And the nice thing is about stuff like this is that by and large, individuals in the community understand. They know what to do, right? In my nearly 25 years of supporting individuals with these kinds of supports, I've only ever had one situation where things went awry. And it's kind of one of those stories where you shake your head and you're not quite sure what happened. But I took Darren once to a public place where there was a public event going on, a fun day type thing. And there was sort of a food fair type thing at this event. And he chose where he wanted to eat, and he had a board that looked just like this. And he picked out what he wanted. So he wanted a hamburger, medium fries and a medium Coke. He even had the specifics were written on the words. It didn't just say French fries, it said medium. And it didn't just say Coke, it said medium Coke, so that it was completely understandable to the person at the counter, because Darren couldn't hear. So if they ask him things, he doesn't even, nor could he respond. So by this point, Darren, because it didn't take long for Darren to be taller than me, so he was taller than me, and we're in line, and I'm standing behind him because, again, I want him to do the ordering by himself. So he's got his board, it's all set up. It says, I want cheeseburger, medium fries, medium Coke. He's got money in his hand, he's all set. He's done this a million times. He's been ordering his own food like this since he was 6, and he's something like 14. So this is not difficult. We get to the counter, Darren approaches the counter, as he has always done. He's got his board, he puts his board on the counter, he gives it to the person. And the person working picked it up and looked at Darren and said, I don't get it. And so I sort of peered out from behind Darren and I said, it's his order, read it. And the guy read it out loud. I want cheeseburger, medium fries, medium Coke. I don't get it. And so I took a deep breath, as I tell my children to do, and I peeked out again and I said, that's what he would like to eat. Oh. And then it proceeded. That is the only time in 25 years where I've sent an individual to the counter with a visual support like this, and the person on the other side has not known what to do, right? So, 99.99999% of the time, this is a really nice support for individuals to use for communication in the community, because people in the community will understand, right? It says exactly what he wants. So I actually find that these kinds of things are often useful to support our individuals in being more independent in community settings, ordering their own food, asking for information at the library. I've had kids go with symbols of particular books or authors that they're interested in and go up to the librarian and say, I want bugs, right? I want books about bugs. And then the librarian knows what they're asking for and can take them to where those books are. Right? So it's a really accessible way for individuals to communicate in the community. So then you end up with things like this, big boards of vocabulary, right? So I had a classroom that did a weekly cooking activity, and this was the size of a door. This fit on the door in the area where they cooked. And so here's I want, put, get, where, no, yes, wait, whole bunch of sort of sentence starter or directives. Words like bake, beat, blend, boil, you notice things are alphabetized. It makes it easier for the adults to find things quickly. If I want to model a sentence, I can find the vocabulary fast. More, hot, yucky, delicious, cold, right? Descriptive kinds of words, prepositions, additional nouns, and everything's kind of set up as you might put it into a sentence so that you can grab things left to right. So for an activity like this would be something where the teacher is pulling symbols off, putting them onto a sentence strip, and then giving it to a child to give a direction, right? And then the kids also have access. They can come and make a sentence to ask for things or comment about things, right? So again, it's that whole idea of modeling use of the system, right? Making sure that other people are using it as well. And then you can also look at other kinds of exchange-based communication support. So this is something that I made for an individual diagnosed with autism, but also who had really very significant cognitive impairment. This is the individual I talked about yesterday, where it took him, a year to learn sort of a handful of object cues, right? It took him hundreds of repetitions to learn new things. One of the things, because he was a young man, he was in his teens, he was learning to go and ask for food at McDonald's. He liked to go to McDonald's, and we wanted to teach him how to ask for himself. Now, he wasn't going to be a traditional PECS user. He didn't understand symbols. He understood kind of object cues. And so this is a hard clipboard, a hard plastic clipboard. I attached a little plastic zipper folder to it, right? And I made a note, please take my money from the pouch and return my change and receipt, thank you. I have found in my career that most people who are staff in stores and restaurants do not take advantage of the individual with the disability who has a pouch that says, please take my money and return the change. I've never had a problem, right? Some of my students are not going to learn the difference between the $10 bill and the $20 bill, and it's a $12 order, I need to give the 20, right? This was an individual where I was gonna be happy if he understood that this symbol meant fries, right? I was gonna be happy with that. Never mind figuring out the money thing. So we'll just make sure there's money in the pouch and directions for the person working at the counter. And it's not like his support person was far away, right? But we want to give him as much independence as possible, right? One for him, but also I always look at this as a lesson for people in the community, right? Everything that we do when we go into the community is a lesson for people in the community about how to think about persons with disabilities, right? How to think about them in terms of their capacity, in terms of the things that they can do, in terms of what we could expect, how we should treat individuals. So when I send somebody to the counter at McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever, even if they can't count their own money, if I can set them up where they don't have a staff person standing right next to them, it makes the person at the counter view that individual with disability differently than if I was standing next to the person, right? Because if I'm standing next to the person, they're immediately talking to me. And their actual customer is being ignored, right? So he was the actual customer. So here are some directions, and the person at the counter can probably figure it out. I'm nearby if help is needed. And then he had some symbols that we made. So medium French fries, and these are 2 toy French fries that I got from the toy store in a little basket of toy foods that I Velcroed on. And we went down to McDonald's and said, hey, we're putting some supports together for this individual. Can I get a few clean French fry containers, and can I get a few clean cups so that we can make something? And so we just attached them to cards that said small orange, because that's what he liked to drink, and medium fries, because that's what he liked to eat. And he learned to hold the clipboard that had everything on it, and we were working on teaching him to wait in line, advance, and hand it to the person, right? That was a big skill for him to learn, right? That was months of teaching were involved in just getting him to stay in line until it was his turn, right? But it was highly motivating for him and highly reinforcing when the French fries arrived, right? And so it's not PECS via the PECS protocol, right? This is not true PECS, Andy Bondi and Lori Frost. It's a bit of an adaptation to meet the needs of an individual, right? He's not discriminating the symbols that we're using. We're just working on teaching him, hand over to somebody if you want something, right? So you can make those kinds of adaptations for individuals who have kind of unique or complex needs, right? But those are the things to think about. How can I make this work? Okay? All right, so that's our kind of expressive communication to ask for stuff. And asking for stuff is important. People need to know what to ask for what they want, and if they don't know how to ask for what they want, what do they usually do? Scream and tantrum and problem behavior. If you have no other way to ask for stuff, that's what you're likely to do. So a lot of times interventions begin with teaching people to ask for what they want. What happens though, and particularly for people with autism who may not be all that motivated about conversation, or at least we don't think they're motivated to engage in conversation, is that once we teach them to ask for what they want, we stop. Like that's all there is. And there's so much more to language than just asking for what you want, right? So much more to communication.